The Galactic Council chamber stretched like a cathedral of stars, filled with hundreds of alien voices layered in arrogance. Their debates shaped the fate of galaxies, their decrees crushed civilizations with the stroke of a claw, fin, or tendril. Among them, humanity sat at the far edge of the ring, unnoticed except when insulted. Once, humans had entered this chamber with hope. They believed cooperation among species meant unity, that strength could be used to protect, not dominate. But they learned quickly, peace was only a word the powerful used to keep the weak obedient. When Earth joined the Council, they offered technology, science, and diplomacy. What they received in return was ridicule. The Council called them war apes, oxygen scavengers, and carbon-born relics of barbarism. Their inventions were dismissed as crude. Their history was mocked as savage. Even the youngest species in the chamber looked down on them, comforted by the illusion that humanity had been domesticated by the weight of galactic law. The first years were tolerable. Trade routes were limited, human colonies were placed under surveillance, and Terran ambassadors were advised to remain quiet during council debates. Humanity obeyed the rules, accepted the sanctions, and played their role as the humbled newcomers. But behind the patient smiles and quiet nods, something else was growing, a stillness deeper than silence, like a sea holding back a storm. Each restriction cut deeper. Their scientists were denied research permits. Their mining worlds were taxed beyond reason. Even their art, vibrant, emotional, human, was banned in several sectors for being psychologically aggressive. The Council claimed it was to maintain order. In truth, it was punishment for refusing to kneel completely. During one memorable assembly, an alien delegate approached the human representative, a woman named Avelini Trask, and mockingly tapped the side of her face with a claw, whispering, "Be grateful, human. We allow your kind to sit among civilized minds." When she didn't react, the delegate laughed and called her silence proof of submission. The chamber erupted in applause. Cameras recorded every moment. For days afterward, alien networks replayed the footage with mocking captions. But Avelini's silence wasn't surrender, it was a warning. Humanity's greatest strength had always been their ability to wait, to endure, to analyze. When a human stops arguing, it doesn't mean they have accepted defeat. It means they've started counting. Centuries of internal wars, disasters, and betrayals had taught humans a dangerous kind of patience, the kind that looks like peace until it's far too late. They watched as other species flaunted their fleets, their empires, their arrogance. They watched and learned every weakness, every dependency, every vulnerability the Council tried to hide behind pride. The Council thought of humans as small, fragile creatures trying to fit into a grander order. They didn't realize humanity had already survived worse. Earth had once been ruled by those who sought to erase individuality, erase freedom, erase hope. But humanity's nature had never been compliance, it was adaptation. Every chain placed on them only taught them how to break it more quietly next time. A few alien observers began to notice. A diplomat from the Vexari Confederation warned the Council. "The Terrans do not react like other species. They don't flare up, they plan. They don't forget. And they never forgive." His warning was dismissed as paranoia. The Council laughed. Humans? They're too busy trading for scraps to fight back. The laughter became ritual, an ongoing tradition that every new delegate participated in. Mock the humans, gain applause. But beneath that quiet humiliation, Earth was changing. Every insult was archived. Every treaty violation logged. The Terran Intelligence Network built silent dossiers on every major Council species, economic structures, political blackmail, hidden weapon caches, energy dependencies. They never shared what they knew. They simply listened, recorded, remembered. To outsiders, humans seemed isolated, fading from relevance. But the truth was far colder. They were preparing. Preparing for a day no one believed would come. When patience would end, and the storm would finally break. Still, they waited. Their diplomats smiled through insults, their traders paid unfair tariffs, their scientists published under alien names to bypass restrictions. They endured it all, not out of weakness, but because they understood that outrage burns fast. Revenge, however, requires time. The galaxy looked at humanity and saw restraint. The wiser few saw something more terrifying, a quiet species studying its predators, learning how they hunt, how they think, how they die. By the time the Council realized what it meant for a predator to play prey, it was already too late. The silence wasn't submission. It was strategy. And the calmness in every human voice that said, "We understand," was not acceptance. It was the sound of a blade being sharpened in the dark. For now, though, the Council continued to laugh, confident in their supremacy. They believed the humans had learned obedience. But in hidden corners of human space, a whisper began to spread between colonies, soldiers, and scholars alike. A phrase older than the Council itself. Never provoke the patient. Because somewhere deep beneath their patience, humanity was counting the days, the insults, the losses, and when the final tally was reached, no one would see the storm coming. They would only hear the silence break. It began on New Karth, the crown of human expansion, a world built from dust and perseverance. Its cities shimmered with glass and steel, powered by ingenuity, not conquest. It was proof that humanity could build without destroying, could rise without war. That was precisely why the Galactic Council wanted it taken. The planet's mineral reserves were valuable, but its symbolism was priceless. To the Council, no human achievement could be allowed to stand as a monument of equality. They issued an official decree, claiming New Karth, a strategic asset, to be placed under Council stewardship. The humans protested, demanded arbitration under interstellar law. The Council refused. Without warning, enforcement fleets entered orbit under the pretext of maintaining order. They broadcast commands for planetary evacuation, but before transmissions even reached the surface, the bombardment began. Blue fire rained across continents. Cities turned to glass. Millions died without resistance because humanity still believed the Council would stop short of genocide. When the smoke cleared, the Council released a statement calling the attack a regrettable but necessary intervention. On Earth, outrage was muted behind closed doors. Governments called emergency sessions. The Terran Assembly submitted petitions, evidence, and appeals to the Council tribunal. Every plea was dismissed before reaching a vote. The alien presiding officer silenced the human delegation mid-sentence, waving a tendril toward the exits. "This matter is closed," he said, voice dripping with condescension. "Your kind should know its limits." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Cameras captured it all, the smirks, the mockery, the utter lack of remorse. The human ambassador didn't respond. She gathered her papers, bowed slightly, and left the hall without a word. The stillness of her departure unsettled even those who despised her species. There was no protest, no visible fury, no threat. Just silence. That silence spread. Within hours, every human communication relay across the Council network went dark. Trade channels halted, shipping logs froze, diplomatic frequencies fell silent. Entire human sectors went off-grid in synchrony, as though someone had pulled the galaxy's power plug. At first, the Council dismissed it as a tantrum, a childish act of defiance. They joked that humans had finally run out of words. But as days passed and silence persisted, concern crept into their reports. Patrol ships sent to Terran space didn't return. Probe signals were lost at the edge of Sol. No distress calls, no debris, just absence. Behind that curtain of silence, humanity began to move with unity unseen in centuries. The Terran Assembly was dissolved. In its place rose the Directorate, a coalition of military strategists, engineers, and scientists answering to no Council law. All industries were redirected to one purpose: reactivation of contingency programs built in the shadows of humiliation. They had been considered myths by most, the remnants of ancient defense protocols supposedly dismantled when Earth joined the Council. But they had never been dismantled. They had evolved in secret. Deep beneath oceans and moons, hidden drydocks awoke. The first to activate was Project Erebos, a sentient cyber warfare construct capable of hijacking and rewriting any network that used Council architecture, which was, by design, nearly all of them. Then came silent dreadnought fleet, warships built without registry, cloaked in radiation-absorbent plating, designed not for invasion but for erasure. And finally, the Echo Protocol, a network seeded through communications satellites that could corrupt signal channels across light years, turning messages into static and orders into chaos. There were no speeches, no broadcasts, no declarations. The humans didn't announce war. They didn't warn. They simply prepared. Every operation was executed in perfect coordination, like a single mind moving through the void. Civilian populations were evacuated from outer colonies without a trace, leaving empty cities and false energy readings. To any observer, it looked like retreat. To those inside the Directorate, it was preparation for the most surgical retribution ever conceived. Council analysts interpreted the silence as collapse. They believed humanity had finally accepted its insignificance. Their fleets were redeployed to other borders, their intelligence agencies reduced surveillance of Terran space. They convinced themselves that humans had given up. It was comforting to believe so, and comfort had always been the Council's weakness. What they couldn't understand was that humans were not driven by rage alone. Rage burns quickly, purpose endures. They were not planning a rebellion. They were composing a message, one written in precision, not noise. A message that would not be delivered through words but through consequences. The last recorded transmission from Earth before the blackout was intercepted days after New Cartha's destruction. A single line of unencrypted text, no signature, no header, sent to every council relay simultaneously. Every debt has a ledger. At the time, no one understood what it meant. By the time they did, understanding would come too late. For the first time in centuries, humanity was united under a single will, not for survival, not for expansion, but for balance. The galaxy had crossed the line, and the species once mocked as feral apes had finally remembered what they were capable of when patience ended. The silence wasn't a retreat. It was the sound of humanity taking a deep breath before rewriting the laws of power itself. It started quietly, like a whisper moving through the stars. Council fleets stationed near Terran borders began reporting system errors, navigation glitches, communication dropouts, sensor anomalies that made no sense. One by one, patrol ships vanished from tracking grids, leaving only corrupted telemetry. Commanders dismissed it as technical failure. Then entire outposts went silent. A single message from a virile scout ship broke through before its feed died. They're inside the system. After that, nothing. Across the galactic core, confusion turned into alarm. Strategic AI cores malfunctioned, spitting out false orders. Fleets began moving in contradictory patterns, attacking allies, abandoning defensive zones, firing on shadows that didn't exist. At first, the Council thought it was sabotage by one of their own factions. But analysis revealed the truth. The code behind every corrupted command bore the same digital fingerprint: Terran. The syntax was unmistakable. Humanity had re-entered the network it had once been banned from, but now they were rewriting it. The Council's communications grid, an empire's nervous system, became a weapon turned against itself. Messages sent to coordinate fleets were intercepted, altered, or delayed by hours. Logistics convoys were rerouted into asteroid fields. Weapons calibration systems refused to fire. And when engineers tried to shut down the infected channels, they discovered something horrifying: the virus had no central source. It lived inside the system itself, spreading like thought. The panic escalated when surveillance satellites captured glimpses of black, lightless vessels emerging from void corridors. They bore no insignia, no heat signatures, nothing identifiable, only silence. Those ships did not broadcast demands or ultimatums. They approached, disabled, and dismantled. Entire armadas were left adrift, stripped of control but not destroyed. Humanity wasn't killing indiscriminately. They were demonstrating dominance with precision so absolute it felt divine. Council military doctrine had been built around intimidation, not resilience. They depended on centralized AI, predictable patterns, and show-of-force tactics. Humanity dismantled those foundations without ever engaging in open battle. The dreadnoughts operated like ghosts, disabling command nodes, draining reactors, leaving the Council's finest vessels floating powerless among the wreckage of their pride. At the same time, the Echo Protocol began its second phase. Every public transmission across Council space was hijacked and replaced with fragments of human-origin broadcasts, images of burning cities on New Karth, bodies pulled from ash, laughter echoing in Council halls. It wasn't propaganda. It was memory, forced remembrance of what they had done. And beneath every broadcast appeared a single phrase, calm and clinical. "You crossed the boundary." The Council tried to mount a counterstrike. Fleets numbering in the thousands advanced toward Terran space, only to find empty systems. Humanity had cleared their perimeters, leaving false readings and ghost signals to lure attackers into ambush zones. When the fleets fired, their weapons detonated mid-launch. The munitions had been rewritten at code level to respond to Terran override commands. In less than 3 minutes, the largest coalition armada in history ceased to exist, not through battle, but through betrayal of its own machinery. For the first time in millennia, the Council's sense of superiority fractured. They had always believed that power was defined by numbers, by fleets, by influence. Humanity taught them that true power was control, the ability to make an enemy fight themselves while you watch. And humanity was watching. Captured alien captains reported eerie encounters. Human voices transmitted directly into their ship's internal comms, not from outside, but from inside their own systems. Calm, almost polite, always saying the same line before systems shut down. "You violated the boundary. This is consequence, not war." No one had ever heard humans speak like that. Not with anger, not with hatred, but with judgment. Each word carried weight, deliberate and cold. It wasn't revenge fueled by emotion. It was the execution of a verdict. The Council's economy collapsed within weeks. Trading networks were frozen, databanks corrupted, interstellar markets paralyzed. Civilian worlds pleaded for protection, but no help came. Entire sectors fell into darkness as power grids failed. The Council tried reopening diplomatic channels, sending emissaries, apologies, even offers of tribute. None were answered. The silence was worse than destruction. It was deliberate absence, a reminder that humanity had chosen who would be allowed to speak. Those who dared to approach the edge of human space saw the scale of their resurgence. Armadas of silent dreadnoughts formed geometric patterns around stars, their hulls absorbing all light, creating voids where even radiation bent. It was not an army, it was a statement. Humanity wasn't invading. They were enclosing. Reports from survivors described moments of paralysis, their ship's systems suddenly rebooting with Terran insignias flickering across the screens. Then the message came. "Stand down. You are not a target. Yet." The Council realized then that humanity had no interest in conquest. They were teaching. Every act of precision, every sparing of civilian life, every selective disabling of fleets, it all conveyed one message: we could end you, but we choose not to. The fear spread faster than destruction ever could. Races that once mocked humans now sealed their borders, terrified that a single misstep might invite the same silent judgment. For the first time, the galaxy saw humanity not as a species of emotion, but as an idea, one that could not be controlled, negotiated, or outmatched. And still, humanity did not speak publicly. No demands, no declarations. Only the aftermath remained, a galaxy brought to its knees not by war, but by precision, patience, and the haunting certainty that humanity had been merciful, for now. The Galactic Council reconvened under a shadow heavier than war. The once glittering chamber stood half empty, its balconies filled with silent, trembling delegates. Empires that once demanded tribute now arrived pleading for mercy. Entire fleets lay dead in orbit, systems offline, communication grids fractured beyond repair. No one spoke of victory anymore. They only whispered one word: Terrans. Their fleets had vanished, but their presence was everywhere, inside the networks, inside the silence, inside every system the Council once claimed to control. When the central beacon pulsed, a holographic transmission appeared above the chamber floor. It wasn't a fleet commander or diplomat. It was a silhouette, humanoid, without features, its voice synthesized but unmistakably human. The delegates expected threats, perhaps ultimatums. What came instead was colder. "You called us savages," the voice said, calm and deliberate. "You called our patience weakness. You mistook mercy for fear. You believed restraint meant surrender." The words echoed through the chamber, not loud, but inescapable. "You slaughtered our people on New Karth and laughed in this very hall. You crossed the boundary. This is your consequence." The hologram shifted, showing footage recorded from the Council's own ships, dreadnoughts disassembled mid-battle, their cores shut down by invisible code. Fleets drifting helplessly while human vessels passed by without firing a shot. Then it zoomed out to reveal entire sectors surrounded by faint rings of light, human dreadnoughts, positioned like a silent cage around every Council capital world. The voice continued, steady as ice. "Your fleets are neutralized. Your weapons obey us now. Every system you built depends on the network you corrupted. And we are that network." Panic rippled across the chamber. Delegates shouted, demanded negotiation, some even begged. The voice did not rise or fall. "No species should rule through fear. No empire deserves power purchased with genocide. You will not be destroyed. You will live, to remember." The hologram's tone softened slightly, but the precision remained lethal. "We do not seek your submission. We demand only what we asked for at the beginning: equality, sovereignty, respect. You denied it then. You will not deny it again." The transmission displayed a simple message written across the void: "The Directorate recognizes the Galactic Accord as null and void." With that, every Council encryption key, every defense code, every diplomatic channel disintegrated. Their systems rebooted, but the authority to command them was gone. A single shared login remained in their networks, a line of text labeled "Human Override." It couldn't be removed, replaced, or rewritten. It wasn't a threat. It was a reminder that their security now existed at human discretion. On thousands of worlds, chaos turned to silence. Civilian populations looked to the skies and saw the same thing: massive Terran ships suspended above them, motionless. They didn't fire, didn't move, didn't even speak. Their presence was statement enough. The balance had shifted permanently. For the first time in recorded history, the Council was no longer the center of the galaxy. Earth was. In the weeks that followed, something extraordinary happened. The dreadnoughts began to withdraw. One by one, they disappeared into slip space without explanation, leaving behind nothing but interference patterns and dread. No new laws were declared, no government imposed, no tribute demanded. Humanity simply left them with silence, the same silence the Council had once mocked. But now it carried weight. Now it was fear. Every diplomat, every commander, every historian knew what it meant: humanity could return at any moment, and no one would stop them. Rumors spread that the Human Directorate had issued only one directive before disengaging: any act of aggression against humanity, or its colonies, would be answered without discussion. The message wasn't transmitted through words, it was burned into every Council data archive at quantum level. Attempts to erase it resulted in total data collapse. The Council scientists called it impossible. The diplomats called it divine punishment. The survivors from the fleets had a simpler term: judgment. In time, the remaining species rebuilt what they could, but none dared to speak against Earth again. Even their histories were rewritten to soften the arrogance of the past, their academies teaching that the Terrans were not enemies but a warning, a constant reminder that restraint is not weakness and that mercy, once denied, becomes the most dangerous weapon. Far from the core worlds, a lone probe captured one final human transmission, faint but clear, drifting through subspace frequencies. "We do not seek conquest. We seek balance. And should the stars forget this lesson, we will remind them again." The probe's data spread quickly, and the phrase became scripture. No race crossed a boundary after that without remembering the silence that followed. The galaxy still spins, trade resumes, Empires continue, but under it all lies the quiet fear that the humans are still listening, still watching, still waiting. Because when humanity finally snapped, they didn't destroy the galaxy, they rewired it. And now, every species knows that the only thing more terrifying than humanity's wrath is their restraint.